In the quiet county of Yuba, a group of 5 friends aged 24 to 32 went on a trip to watch a basketball game at the California State University. It's 10 p.m. and the basketball game has just finished. A local shopkeeper is closing up for the day and recalls 5 friends entering the market. They buy snacks and leave for their journey home. However, instead of driving home, the driver diverted into a mountain road. Their car was found abandoned in the middle of nowhere, with no sign of any of the friends except wrappers from the snacks they had bought earlier that night. What happened that night? Where did the Yuba Five go? Bill Sterling, Jack Huett, Ted Weiher, Jack Madruga, and Gary Mathias were their names. They were often referred to as the boys by their parents. At the time of the disappearance, they lived with their parents, and the group of friends had plans for the next day to attend a week-long basketball tournament sponsored by the Special Olympics. This was something they had been looking forward to for a while now. Some of the men even made preparations the night before, laying out their uniforms and requesting their parents to wake them up on time. So when they didn't return home, some of the parents grew more worried and eventually called the police the following morning. Police in Butte and Yuba County started searching along the route the men had taken to Chico. The group of men they were searching for were Jack Madruga, age 30, had a slight intellectual disability but was capable of driving his 1969 Mercury Montego, the vehicle the group was in that night. Gary Mathias, age 25, had been diagnosed with schizophrenia, a serious mental disorder characterized by disturbances in thought, perception, and behavior. He had experienced psychotic episodes in the past, but was reportedly stable on medication. Bill Sterling, age 29, had a mild intellectual disability which limited his cognitive abilities. Jack Huett, age 24, had a significant intellectual disability which made him highly dependent on his family for support. Ted Weiher, age 34, had a mild intellectual disability affecting his cognitive and adaptive functioning. On Tuesday, February 28th, a forest ranger discovered an abandoned car deep in the mountains of Plumas National Forest. It was found unlocked with the windows down, and from the looks of it, it seemed to be undisturbed with no signs of a forced entry or struggle. No keys were found. However, personal items such as wrappers from snacks the group bought that night and empty soft drink cans were left on the dash and seats. Despite the car being stuck in the snow, it was still functional. There was no indication of mechanical issues and the car still had a quarter tank of fuel left. The car had skid marks from attempting to escape the snow. However, the forest ranger that found the car said the car was only 6 inches deep in the snow and assumed one man would have been enough to push the car out the snow. The police were notified and managed to identify the turquoise and white 1969 Mercury Montego as Jack Madruga's car. The police determined that the driver was either very careful or familiar with the road. None of the 5 had any connections to the area where the car was found, and most of them were homebodies. The men didn't particularly enjoy nature or forested areas, except for Gary, who had previously spent time in rural areas while serving in the army and was more familiar with the outdoors. Things become more concerning surrounding Gary, and I will get into them later. For now, we are left with many unanswered questions. If the car was still able to be driven, why would all 5 men abandon a safe, warm vehicle and head out in the middle of an unknown, wintry mountain? The group were also 5 fit and healthy men, meaning they were more than strong enough to push the car out of there. Things just didn't add up and it would only get more confusing from here. For the next 5 days, forest rangers searched the area around the abandoned car, however, no trace of the missing men. Soon after, a blizzard swept through, making the search operation dangerous, so search efforts were called off. On the other side of the investigation, police received thousands of leads. Most of them were unreliable and dismissed, but 2 sightings in particular stood out. A 55-year-old man named Joseph Shons claimed to have seen the group alongside a woman with a baby. His story did seem slightly unreliable, as he provided 2 versions of the story, which went along the lines of this. On the late night of February 24th, Joseph was driving along the mountain road to check the snow conditions in preparation for a weekend ski trip with his family. His car, however, got stuck in the snow. He attempts to remove the car out of the snow, but fails. That night, Joseph slept in his car. The next morning, on February 25th, Joseph attempted to free his vehicle again. Unfortunately, as he was pushing the vehicle, he began to experience a heart attack. So he went back inside the car, keeping the engine running for warmth. The entire day, he laid in his car in severe pain. The story gets slightly confusing here, as there are 2 versions of his story. The first version is, at around 11:30 p.m. that night, Joseph noticed headlights approaching from behind. When he looked out, he saw a parked car with its headlights on and a group of people gathered around it, including a woman holding a baby. He called out to the group for help, but when he did, the group stopped talking and turned off their headlights. In the other version of his story, at around 11:30 p.m, he saw 2 sets of headlights coming up behind him. One was a car and the other was a pickup truck. The 2 vehicles stopped about 20 feet from him, and the passengers from the car exited and went into the pickup truck. The car that was left was supposedly Jack Madruga's 1969 Mercury Montego. The car belonging to the Yuba County Five was found abandoned on the same road where Joseph had been stranded. The time frame of Joseph's story lines up with when the group went missing, though this only left more unexplained questions than answers. Some argued that Joseph was suffering from a heart attack for several hours, which might have impaired his perception and memory of the events of that night. In another town, 30 miles away, another sighting resurfaced. Mary Davis, a store clerk, was working her usual shift. Outside the store, she saw a red pickup truck with what she thought to be the missing Yuba County men, alongside a woman which similarly matches Joseph's description of a pickup truck and a woman. She identified 2 of the men as Huett and Sterling standing outside the store in a telephone booth, while the other 2, Weiher and Madruga, went inside the store and bought food items. However, Mary Davis did not mention Gary Mathias, giving us no information on his whereabouts so far. She stated the men did not appear to be in distress or acting as if they were in immediate danger, which added confusion to the case. On the 4th of June, a group of motorcyclists discovered a trailer at a campsite located roughly 19 miles away from the abandoned car. The front window of the trailer was broken, and upon opening the door, the motorcyclists found a malnourished body, later identified as Weiher. Weiher was wrapped in 8 sheets of blanket and his shoes were missing, indicating somebody must have taken them off, perhaps after he died. Inside the trailer, they also discovered sneakers which were later identified to belong to Gary Mathias. The strange part about his death was that inside the trailer was enough canned food to sustain Weiher for an extended period, yet much of it remained untouched. The fireplace in the trailer had matches and books for kindling, but no fire was ever started. The broken window also could have been barricaded, which leaves multiple questions surrounding Weiher's cause of death. Along the same road, they found the remains of 2 bodies, later identified as Madruga and Sterling, on opposite sides of the road. Autopsies revealed that both died of hypothermia. Jack Huett's remains were the last to be found, located less than a mile away from the trailer. Nearby, his shoes and jeans were also found, which assisted in confirming his identity. Like the others, his death was determined to be hypothermia. Gary Mathias is the only person in the group that remains missing to this day. This raises suspicion, especially since his shoes were discovered inside the trailer, meaning at one point in time he had been there. There are countless questions surrounding this case, but the biggest one we all wonder is why the Yuba County Five didn't head home. Many people remain suspicious of Gary Mathias, the only member of the group who still hasn't been found to this day. When the police investigated Gary Mathias' background, they found that he had friends in the small town of Forbestown. The police speculated that the group might have tried to visit Gary Mathias' friends on their way home. They believed the group might have accidentally taken the wrong turn near Oroville, leading them onto a mountain road. While this theory seems plausible, it doesn't explain why the group didn't turn back or try to get the car out of the snow. Instead, they abandoned the vehicle and wandered into the unknown. Gary Mathias was known for being unpredictable and had run-ins with the police before 1976. However, after starting schizophrenia medication, his behaviour improved significantly. As the only other member with a driver's licence, could Gary Mathias have gained access to the car and been the one driving that night? Given his history, some speculate Gary Mathias' mental state might have influenced the group's strange decisions that night. Let's go back to the sightings. Both reports mentioned a woman being involved with the group of men. If Joseph's recollection was correct, and the group of men, along with the other people he saw, ignored his calls for help, it doesn't make them seem so innocent. However, Weiher's mother insisted that ignoring someone's pleas for help was completely out of character for her son and the group in general. They had history of helping strangers and were raised to be considerate people. This makes us all wonder who the other people were that the group were with, especially since we have 2 sightings with similar descriptions of these individuals. There's no doubt in my mind that someone knows what happened to the group. What makes this case so intriguing is that with each clue seems to lead to another puzzle, another mystery, another unknown.